Hey, welcome back to our seminar series here at Lake Fork Marina. Got my good buddy Cody Mays joining me tonight. Thank you so much for helping us out. Appreciate all y'all that came out tonight. Appreciate all you watching behind the camera. And man, it's fall transition. It's kind of a unique deal this year because it doesn't feel like fall transition because it's like 93 out there right now.
Yeah,
it's hot.
It is hot, but if you
the mornings are cool, but it's still real hot.
Which I know you wouldn't know that, but yeah, they are cool.
Oh,
10 to 2.
10 to 2.
Yeah. It's like Dr. Pepper, baby. That's my fishing schedule. No, it's weird though because even though the air temps haven't really cooled off any at all, the water temps are starting to cool down because of the shorter days and the cooler mornings. And it's like all of nature is sending these cues to everything that lives in nature that fall's coming. Whether it's here right now or not, they know it's coming because acorns are falling off trees. I've noticed that the last couple weeks. Shad are piling up in backs of creeks like crazy. Like in certain areas on this lake, there is, I mean, it almost looks like fall the way there's so many shad back in there.
Like it's raining.
Are you seeing the same thing?
Yeah, this morning they were everywhere.
Yeah.
So in the backs of pockets, they were smaller. Up towards the mouth and all that, they were bigger.
Yeah.
So.
The other thing that's kind of unique is typically when we go into this fall transition, we're dealing with a turnover situation. Like this, to me, would be right about when we would be having turnover right now, based on what I'm seeing with the way the fish are behaving. But we don't really have a turnover this year. We really didn't have a thermocline. We may, it may have turned a little bit because we had some up and down weather throughout the summer. So we may have had a couple of smaller turnovers. But if we're having turnover right now, it's so small and insignificant that I'm not even noticing any of the telltale signs, and I'm certainly not noticing a drop in activity with the fish like you normally do during turnover. Normally in turnover, all that muck comes off the bottom, all that deoxygenated water mixes in with the good water, and the fish just feel like garbage and they don't really bite. Well, with no thermocline set up, there was no deoxygenated water to mix with the good water, so it really hasn't affected the fish nearly as much. I think we kind of either are going through it or have had it because I have seen those jelly sacks, the myazone or whatever, the colonies or whatever. I've seen several of those floating around the lake over the last couple weeks. So I think we've kind of been going through the turnover that we're going to have. And the water temps are saying that too, because the water temps are dropping down in towards mid to lower 80s at times right now. Well, that's usually when we have the turnover. It's usually when it happens. So I think what's going on this year is we just don't really have a major turnover. But what I wanted to talk to you guys about tonight is how fish behave during the turnover and during the fall transition in the early part of it, when we're right at the end of summer, going into fall, when you first have that turnover, how do fish behave? Because even though the fish are more active than they normally are during turnover, well, we're going to have to talk to them about getting that turned off, and that's new.
You need something in there, yeah.
How about that? That's for when they in the office. I'm going to hide it from them. They ain't going to know where it went. Yeah. Because I'm going to forget that I put it there for sure. But, where was I? Oh, fish behavior. Yeah, the way fish behave in this period, the way they're moving, where I'm seeing fish located at, is basically the same as turnover right now for me. What I'm seeing is I'm seeing offshore schools of fish kind of dissipate and go away. The offshore schools of fish that are staying out there are moving up tighter to the bank, just wherever they were at. Right? If they're on the end of a long point, they're kind of moving up that point to a little bit shallower water. And that's what happens in the turnover period. And for me, what I'm thinking is it's happening the same way in a transition without a big turnover, because what will happen is the lake will turn over and all the fish just kind of go boom to the bank and scatter out. And it becomes a deal where you just kind of put your trolling motor on go and you just run, and you catch one here, one there. It's junk fishing 101 during the turnover. About the only place you can find a wad of fish is if you go to the very back of a creek where there isn't a turnover effect. Then some of those fish will still be behaving in groups like they were throughout the summer until it really cools off and changes the pattern back there. And I'm seeing a lot of that. Like you can do a little bit of everything right now. You can still catch some out offshore off the bank, but a little bit shallower. You can catch some on docks in mid depths or even shallow depth docks. You can catch some in shallow grass flats. You can catch some in main lake shallow grass, just old deer tongue or gator grass, just flooded bank grass on the main lake. At times, if you're going down there and you see a couple birds, you might want to swing over and check them out, because if there's shad over there, there's bass with them right now. The bass are really getting hyper focused on shad. They're biting shad pattern type baits, and they are scattering out all over the lake up on the bank from what I'm seeing. Now you just said you just had a really good day today. Well, tell me what you saw.
I mean, like I said, all back to the coves, all the coves, they all had shad all in the back. There was actually schooling fish everywhere we went. I mean, everywhere.
And that's what I mean by the behavior. Like there's still, it's not normal turnover fall transition deal, because normally turnover fall transition, the fish are just like, don't really bite, hard to catch. But even though like yesterday I had a tough day, like a really tough day, and you guys are all gonna get to see it on camera next week because we were filming yesterday, and y'all know how we do around here. Good or bad, you're gonna see how it goes when we put them cameras on for one day a week. So look forward to us sucking next week, I guess. But even though I had a bad day yesterday, other days this week, the fish activity level is up. Like they are, when you get around them, they're biting and they're chasing shad. Yeah,
most of ours came 6 inches of water. I mean,
yeah,
shallow, and some good ones.
Yes.
I mean, all we're doing today was, hitting the bank and targeting brush or some type of structure in the water up shallow. All of them shad were up around it, and then bass are going to be staging behind it in it for an ambush. So that's the target we hit today, and like you said, we just turned the trolling motor on high and beat the bank.
Yeah. What was your best technique today?
Chatterbait, white chatterbait, believe it or not.
Shad colored?
Yep.
Do you cut it down this time of year at all? You trim it down, make it a little smaller or anything? You just leave it regular?
Leave it regular.
I like to downsize a lot of my baits when we go into fall transition, because one of the things that happens is the early shad movement is typically the smaller shad in the lake. The shad you're seeing, like you said, in the backs of creeks are smaller. Out towards the main lake, a little bit bigger shad. I like to actually downsize my baits. I'll throw little swim baits. I'll throw chatterbait, but I'll cut the skirt right at the bend of the hook on the back of it, and I'll shorten up my trailers. I'll tell you, maybe my favorite bait all time, and I still throw it a bunch, and it just kind of gets overlooked. Nobody even throws it anymore. It's just a little white quarter-ounce spinner bait with a little bitty willow blade on it. I mean, that's a bait that you can fish real fast with, and you can cover a bunch of water when you need to, when they kind of get on that bank and spread out like they do right now. But just anything that's a small profile, that's white, and looks kind of simulates a shad in some way, can be really effective. Most importantly is make sure it's efficient for whatever you're fishing. If you're fishing grass, it needs to be something you can fish around grass. If you're fishing wood, it needs to be something you can fish around wood. It's going to be a little square bill, like the little ones, like the 1.5 stuff, the Crush 50X, the old original ones. Yeah, those type of deals are really good this time of year too, but just small profile shad baits are the deal.
Yeah, I was throwing a little underspin, little hollow belly, a little 3-inch, 3.5 inch, the smallest one to make. And man, we kept getting a lot of short strikes on it. They weren't really, they were hitting it, but they
weren't committing to it.
So my client, every time I'd get a short strike, I'd tell him, hey, throw it right there, and 70% of the time he would catch that fish.
With the chatterbait. What's funny about that is yesterday it was the opposite. They would short strike the chatterbait, but they would eat the swim bait. So that's kind of fall fishing though. It's day to day. Any little bait, some type of wiggle will make them go ahead and commit to it and eat versus another.
Yeah. And then of course, we moved off to one of my favorite spots that where that is this time of year. And
why do I know where it is? I fished with you like 3 times ever.
Put it on the app, man.
Well, that just means it's one of my favorite spots. It ain't one of your favorite spots. It's one of my favorite spots.
I'm talking about during 22 kill tournament. Remember that one with you? Yeah, I wouldn't remember either. But anyways,
all I can say is prove it.
Drop shot, on them ledges, high ledges, sandbars, pond dams, whatever. That was the end of the day. After lunch, we the shallow bite stopped, so we went out a little deeper. And man, it was like every 10 minutes, them fish were pushing them shad up into that wall, and we would catch them for 5 or 10 minutes, and then they'd go away and they'd come back.
I noticed that on some offshore fish too this week, where you just had to kind of wait them out. You grab them, maybe get 1 or 2 bites, tops, and then they go away for 15 minutes or whatever, and 10 minutes, whatever, and then they come back, you get 1 or 2 more bites, and they go away. But if you end up spending an hour and a half there, you end up catching 6 or 8 or whatever fish out of that same school. They were just moving off and moving on. Also typical for a transitional time of year, right? Fish moving around a lot, baits moving around a lot, the fish just kind of fall on the bait.
Yep.
Yeah, absolutely.
Unders today was really, really good. We caught a lot of good unders that will be good tournament fish for next week.
Well, and that's one reason I wanted to, I'm glad that we got you here tonight, because there's a lot of big tournaments that start happening this time of year. We're sitting here tonight, and there's Mad Dog Moore tournament tomorrow. There's Elliott Electric tournament on Sunday. Those are both sizable tournaments for sure. The very next weekend is the biggest tournament of the year with Sealy Outdoors Big Bass Splash. Of course, right after that, in October, we've got the Berkeley, and there's tournaments scattered in between. And you're a guy that before you started guiding this last year, you've had some tremendous success in these summer to fall transition and fall tournaments. I mean, you've got a great track record of winning a lot of money at some of these big bass events and stringer tournaments in this time of year, right?
Yeah. You know, if I have any advice to say, it's going to be, this year's going to be weird. It depends on, you know, we're talking about next weekend. I really think the fish that's going to win it is going to be out deep, but that's going to be somebody that's got patience, that's going to set out there.
Yeah, for that one guy that wins it on that giant that he catches out deep, there's going to be another 200 or 300 guys that sit out there out deep trying to win it that get nothing.
Right.
They catch a few big slot fish and that's it.
Yep.
Yeah.
But your majority of your hourly winners, they're going to be beating the banks. Yeah. And I mean, there's nothing better than a chatterbait or underspin or, you know, something that's fast moving that you can cover a lot of ground. Your best times of the morning is going to be from sun up to probably about 10 o'clock in the morning. After that, then that's when you're going to need to transition and go back a little deeper as well. And then, you know, I've always talked about on that second day, you're going to want to pull back off the bank a little bit because that bank is going to be beat so hard that them fish are going to push back. I mean, actually, that's what they're going to do.
Explain that a little bit, because that's a really good tip I've heard you give before, but explain a little bit what you're talking about there.
All right, so 9 times out of 10, when you see people fishing the bank, they're hugging the bank. They're, 20 yards off the bank. And
the bait's hitting the actual bank line almost,
and they're dragging it on. So where their boat is actually positioned is where a lot of the good striking zones for your fishing is. I mean, anywhere from 2 to 4 foot of water. Yeah. And they're right there. So there's going to be some up shallow, but not as many that's under their boat. But then all that traffic all day long is going to end up pushing them fish back even further. So you need to set back maybe 50, 60, 70 yards. I mean, however long you can make a good, accurate cast and work that bait all the way back to the boat.
Yeah. So basically making your cast where all the other boats, like the end of your cast is where the other boats are going.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Yeah. So it's always worked for me. It's always worked for me and Vic. So
yeah. Well, I mean, that's just a really simple, good tip that anybody can do, right? I mean, it's just a simple, good tip that anybody can do. One thing about Lake Fork is there's cover everywhere in this lake. So, yeah, the obvious cover that you can see may be up on the bank, and the better-looking grass to your eye may be up on the bank. But what you don't see underwater is the grass that extends out, right, at times. And what you don't see underwater is the laydowns and the stumps and all that. And so just back it out, it looks like you're fishing nothing sometimes because of the age of the lake and all the timber's broken off under the surface. But realistically, you're really not fishing nothing. There's plenty of cover in that 4 to 6 foot range or whatever it is that you're throwing into to fish. You just don't realize it. And those fish that are pulling out off the bank because of the boat traffic, that's where they're sitting. And I'll tell you something else to confirm that little kind of theory of yours is that tracking survey from Texas Parks and Wildlife that they did for almost like the entire year, other than like literally 2 to 3 or 4 weeks at a time in the springtime for spawning cycles, and a little bit in the fall, like a few weeks in the fall, like fall, like November, when they really go and chase. And even during that fall period, they found the majority of the fish on this lake live in what I would classify as no man's land. In 4 to 8 or 10 foot around timber, where nobody really fishes. And the majority of these fish they tag, they spend most of the year in those type of areas, and they have a home range they don't ever leave. I mean, they're able to go back to the same area and find the majority of these fish within the size of this room, usually, or for sure the size of this building, and they're just sitting around a piece of wood in 4 to 10 feet, depending on where they are, what the creek channel does, or whatever. Now, does that mean that fish doesn't pull up on that shallow point to feed in that obvious area? Yeah, when he goes to feed, he probably pulls up on that grass edge, or he probably pulls up on that shallow point. Sure he does. But he spends the majority of his life, the majority of the fish in this lake, from that study, based on that study, spend the majority of their life in what most of us never fish, what I call no man's land. Just out off the bank, kind of like what Cody's talking about, where your boat's sitting, from there back. From there behind you, suspended on some timber, hanging around a piece of timber somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
I mean, it's just like today. I mean, I always make long casts. I mean, you can ask Vic. I hate hugging the bank. I like making that long throw. A lot of our bites today actually came at the boat. Whether they were following it that long, I doubt it.
Or they were just out there.
You know, so, and a lot of times, you may call them hoe buzzards or whatever, but there's a lot of places I fish when I'm guiding. People will come by me, and you can tell they're like, what the hell is he doing out there? They'll drive by and they'll be looking at me and they'll be looking at their map.
They're like, there's nothing there.
There's no. What is he fishing? You know, so sometimes you gotta think outside the box. You know.
You start saying car.
Yeah. we had a catfishing. Don't worry about it, folks. Well, you know, Zach always says he has a theory for me. Like when you see, you got to keep a couple crappie rods ready. That way, when you see my boat come around, you put your bass rod down and put your crappie rod up. Then I won't come fish your spot.
Man, you know, I get that, but I can go fish one of your spots.
Oh,
and
yeah.
not catch nothing. You can pull up and you set in that exact same spot you're used to setting in. The setup is the most important.
The setup, having confidence, knowing your casting lines, knowing the little hard spot within there, the spot within the spot type deal, that all matters. Yes, 100%, because me and you are very good friends, and we do share information, no doubt about it, on a regular basis. And you've got a pond dam out here that you fished a bunch over the last couple of years, and you catch a ton of fish off of it. And I've gone there on your advice a half a dozen times, and I bet I ain't caught 3 fish off of it. So, the old adage, you can't catch another man's fish, is.
Not throwing the drop shot.
I did actually even swallow my pride and throw a drop shot on it, and it still didn't work. No, but I mean, you're so right. I mean, we can sit up here and give people all the advice in the world. I mean, heck, I sell the spots I fish on a fishing app that guys can use because I want to help everybody as much as I can. And I do that with all confidence that I can still go in those areas and catch the fish I'm catching because it's about the little things and having the confidence. Fishing with confidence, that's something that I don't think anybody's ever been able to quantify in bass fishing, is how important and why is it so effective when you're confident in a bait or an area, or just confident, overall confidence in the way you're fishing with all that combined. And I don't really know what it is. I can't sit here and explain to you guys tonight what it is that makes the confidence factor so important. But what I can tell you is, if you're in an area and you're like, man, I don't feel like I'm gonna catch anything here, you need to go, because you're not gonna do very well there. When you're in an area and you're like, dude, this looks right, this feels right, you're gonna catch fish there most of the time. Like, you're very rarely gonna be wrong. And I don't know. I mean, there's so many subtle things. You think about what we're doing, right? Like, has anybody ever eaten a plastic hot dog or a metal hamburger in this room? Like, digested it? No, nobody ever has. Well, we're making these fish, literally, we're convincing them to try and digest a piece of plastic or metal every day. That's what we do, right? And a lot of times it is the most subtle of twitch off of a piece of grass, or leaving that shaky head or Texas rig sitting there that extra half a second longer, that gets that fish to go from doing this to doing this, right? Because I promise you, I've seen enough underwater footage of bass fishing lures. Every one of us has a whole bunch of fish that do this every day and then go that way, right? If you've ever sight fished, how many times have you pitched and they do this before they bite, right? So we all are experiencing that a lot. And when you have, the only thing I can say about confidence is when you have the confidence in the way you're fishing and you're reeling that chatterbait just a half a step lower, or you're hitting that much more cover with your square bill, or like I said, you're just leaving that Texas rig sit there that much longer, whatever it may be with the difference of action that you put on it when you have confidence in it, that is what's getting that fish to go ahead and commit to biting it. And confidence is the most important thing in bass fishing. No doubt about it. No doubt. I mean, hands down. And it's such a weird deal because nobody can really figure out, nobody can quantify what it is. It's not measurable what it is that makes that so important.
You know, the funny thing about that is we all have that one friend or somebody that we've taken out fishing that didn't know nothing about nothing, and they smoke you in fishing. And I have come to the realization with guiding that these people that I take out that don't have, that's never been, or this
they don't have the experience.
They don't have the experience. They are catching more fish than the person they're with or somebody that I've taken out or whatever. And all it has to do with is we may think we're working it the right way because we're so used to working something that way. They don't know what they're doing. So they're just doing a little bit of everything. So you got to think about it. That crazy erratic movement that they may be doing is causing them to get more bites.
Yeah. There's not a guy that I've ever met that won't tell you that, we all have the husband and wife scenario, right? The husband bass fishes, wants to go on a guide trip wife just wants to spend time when she comes out. She's like, I don't really have to fish. I'll fish a little bit, and she whoops his tail. Like, and it happens more times than not in those scenarios that the person that doesn't fish whoops. I mean, you're right. More times than not, when you get two people on a boat, the experienced one gets beat by the inexperienced one.
Yep. And so with that said, just don't be afraid to change something up either. I mean, how many bites have y'all gotten when you're sidetracked talking to your fishing partner on your phone because you're not paying attention to what you do? How many times have you missed fish because of that? You know what I mean? So it's like you said, it's the small things. So.
Absolutely. I'm a little disappointed.
Well,
because I guarantee you I have the oldest hat that you've ever seen on my head right now. And you didn't even make a comment on it.
well, I actually, when you first walked up, I seen it and I was like, I know that hat. It used to be red in his old videos.
No.
That's not that hat?
Oh, no. This hat has been faded since long before I was guiding. Like, the funny thing is, I found this hat not too long ago, and this was my favorite hat for years and years, obviously, with how worn it is. But I actually found a picture of me, like my first year when I first got out of the Marine Corps, my first year or two living here, when I was fishing the big fish I caught, and I'm wearing this hat. And 10 years ago, this hat was faded like that, dude. So no, it definitely was. It did used to be. Well, you can tell right here. This is an easy place to show the difference, right? That's the color difference right there.
We spend so much time in the sun. I just went and bought a new hat today because my other one's already fading, and it's only like a month old.
Yeah.
So what is that? Just imagine what that's doing to our skin.
I mean, I figure mine's just toughened up by now. If it ain't, it better get tough quick.
That's what I'm saying. You know, I can't believe you ain't said something about my shirt. Because everybody's, man, you always wearing a camo shirt. I ordered like 8 of these because I love camo.
Yeah.
And that way I'm always wearing the same thing.
You're talking to the
People are
guy.
like, hey,
You're talking to the guy that wears camo shorts in every video. So, I mean, I'm not even going to notice your camo.
Like, so we really aren't comparing much at this point.
I'm not going to even notice your camo. That's off brand. That ain't even like Mossy Oak or nothing.
Man, it's what I can find.
Mossy Oak. I am accepting sponsorships, by the way, on them shorts. I'm just saying. You got
Camo Hey Dudes. Camo Hey.
Is that camo?
It sure is.
Is it ironic that Hey Dudes is so close to sounding like Gay Dudes?
Well, I do throw a drop
Or you
shot.
think they did that on purpose?
I tell you, if you get a pair, you won't take them off either.
The Hey Dudes?
Yep. They're
I'm
comfortable.
I don't know,
telling you,
man.
I talked him into them, and I'll have
it is
to.
true.
So all you guys are gay dudes. That's what you're telling me.
That's it. And we are around
Now-
the people that's like us.
Really?
Really?
Billy, these are actually real camo, not no like twill, whatever that crap
Yeah.
is.
Digital.
That's what I would expect Hey Dude to think is camo.
These
That's what
are
that
like
is.
Actual like
Camouflage.
camo.
But they may be gay dudes, but you know what? At
They
least
are pretty
we're not
comfortable,
kayak fishermen.
That's true. That's true. Hey, I'll tell you that the worst part about, maybe the best part about this old hat that I found, everybody that I've told about it's just like, yeah, whatever, it's an old hat, whatever. You know how I know who my like trashiest, most redneck friend is? Because when I told Zach when I said, Zach, what do you think about this hat? He goes, dude, that's awesome. I wish I could buy them when they look like that. He goes, I'm about to go buy some hats, just leave them on the dash of my truck for 15 years so I can wear them 20 years later. Yeah. He loves it. He thinks it's the best thing he's ever seen. So, Zach, I wore this hat just for you tonight. Well, does anybody have any questions about fishing during fall transition or anything, really? Anything y'all want to ask? Yes, sir.
So, like, whenever you're talking about moving off the bank as the day goes on, do you still throw a moving bait, or do you slow down and start throwing a creature bait, or even a big worm? Or...
That's a good question. Yeah.
So, you want to-
No, go ahead, man. It's your deal.
okay. So it depends on where you're going. You got to look at what's going
Yeah.
on. I mean, if you're seeing a lot of your bait fish on top of the water and you're seeing fish chase, obviously you want to throw something. So like today when we pulled up there on the spot, that was going on. So I pulled out a jerk bait. All right, I handed my client the jerk bait, and he started working it, and he kept getting hit. So it was so crazy too, because when he was working that jerk bait, this fish came all the way to the boat. All right.
Just falling every time it twitched?
Yeah.
Yeah,
every time-
yeah,
and he
I've seen
stopped,
that, yeah.
And then he came around on this side
Yeah.
of it, and he was going around it while I was just sitting there. He didn't know what to do,
Yeah,
and he wouldn't bite it.
yeah.
I don't know. It was crazy. But no, so if you see him on top like that, you need to throw something, like you said, a little square bit.
Visible signs of activity, more winding. For me, in that situation, I'm going to tell you, my thought process is always in bass fishing. I'm always thinking of this. What do I have confidence in that I can fish efficiently in the cover available? If it's wide open water, man, I'm gonna throw stuff with treble hooks, jerkbait, square bill, lipless crankbait. I mean, I'm gonna get after it, right? If it's just timber, yeah, square bill's still in play, but the jerkbait and the lipless crankbait kind of gonna go out, right? You know, and then there's things you can fish through anything, like swim baits, right? You can fish swim bait through anything. So, and that's one reason that when you're having to adjust so much throughout the day, like you are right now, for me, I'm having to adjust throughout the day, each day. He sounded like he kind of dialed it in today pretty good, had a really good day. That really hasn't been the case for me. I've been kind of flying by the seat of my pants. You know, Monday and Tuesday were good. Like, we kind of caught them pretty good Monday and Tuesday. Wednesday and Thursday, it was like, we got to kind of figure this out as we go deal. I love a bait like a swim bait that I can throw up shallow and burn it, or I can let it drift a little deeper in 4 foot of water and fish it there, and it doesn't matter what the cover is. I'm not going to get hung up. I love baits like that. I'm going to tell you, I lean on a Texas rig this time of year. As soon as we come into the fall transition, like starting right now and going all the way through about the end of October, once we get to the end of October, to me, that's kind of like the peak of the fall bite in November, and that's when it's really hyper shad focused, and there's big fish and big bait grouped up together, and that's when I really swing for the fences a little bit more, start throwing bigger swim baits, start throwing big jigs, start throwing big spoons out deep, stuff like that. But just an old school 7-inch Texas rig ribbon tail worm. And one that I've been using lots, that hog wallet. That hog wallet is just a bite getter. And, you know, I've always traditionally used just regular 7-inch ribbon tail worms this time of year. I'm throwing that hog wallet. Yeah, I'm sponsored by 6 Cents. That's one of the reasons I'm throwing it. I'm also throwing it because I just have so much confidence in it. I get bid on it on a shaky head. I get bid on it on a Carolina rig. I get bid on it on a Texas rig. It just doesn't matter. However I fish it, whatever application's there for that cover that time of year, they bite that hog wallet. So right now I'm Texas rigging a hog wallet. And it's just a creature bait that's a cross between a lizard and a brush hog. But if I was going to back out, I would take an inventory of the cover that's available. What can I fish through that efficiently? Something I'm almost always going to be able to fish efficiently is going to be a Texas rig and a swim bait. So those are two things I'm going to have ready at all times, and I can cover anything. Now, will a square bill work better? If I'm able to fish a square bill clean and get some deflections off wood, will a square bill give me more bites? Probably so, yeah. And in that case, I will pick it up. If it's wide open water, will a jerkbait work better at getting more bites? Yes, it will. It causes more reaction bites. Good thing about a jerkbait is you can fish it real fast if they're chasing. And if they're not chasing and it's dead calm, you can twitch paws as long as you want to and still get bites with reaction bites. So a jerkbait's also very versatile. It's just about taking inventory of cover the water you're fishing, what's in there, and the fish activity levels. If you can kind of dial in both of those, you're going to catch them. Yeah. Any other questions? Surely we got to have a couple. It's a crazy time of year to fish. A lot of things going on, so I know some of y'all got to have some different questions about it. It's going to start, you know, as we ease through this, and we kind of, once, it's like, to me, the magic is like once that water gets in the 70s, that's when you really start to see the real fall activity. And then when you get to the bottom end of the 70s, that's when it really is like peak fall bite. But once that water breaks over into the 80, 79, 78 mark, you can really go to the backs of creeks and just, you got to find them, right? Because as fish begin to group back up, what that does to the rest of the lake is it creates a higher percentage of empty water, right? The more grouped up they are, the more empty the rest of the lake is. That's just the math, right? So that's one thing about fall fishing is you got to go and go and go and go and go a lot of times without finding them. But boy, when you find them, once you get into those 70s, that's when you can really get those fish starting to group back up.
On the swim baits, are you using the underspin?
I have been. Yeah, you know, for me, the only time that I don't want to use an underspin on a smaller swim bait is when I have really clear water. So I'm trying to be more natural, right? So for around here, we don't have that. You know, unless you're at Lake Welsh or Lake Athens, I don't see, and most of the time there you can get away with it. There may be days at Lake Welsh and Lake Athens that water's the cleanest water we have around here. Brandy Branch is another one that has really clean water. On certain days there, especially the calmer days, I'm going to go without the underspin. But for the majority of the water, and especially here at Lake Fork, it's never that clear to where you don't, I think the underspin is going to do nothing but help. A little bit of added vibration and flash is only going to help you in the watercolor that we experience out here. No. Really clear water, I'm going to try, and the swim bait's a great bait in really clear water because it can look so natural. So in really clear water, I'm going to take that jewelry off of it and make her look as real as I can.
When's the weedless poacher going to start coming into play?
Yeah.
little bit more.
Kind of in that 70s water temperature in the 70s. And the reason I say that's when more of those bigger shad are gonna start to move and gather. Not necessarily move, they're already kind of in some of the creeks, but they'll really start to gather back up. Transition spreads everything out. As we come out of transition, we'll slowly group back up. So as we start to group back up and you get groups of those bigger shad together and groups of bigger bass with them, that's when the bigger swim baits come into play. And the weedless poacher is kind of a medium-sized swim bait.
Yeah.
You know, it's a really good bait because you can get big bites on it. You can fish for fish that are eating big gizzard shad, or you can fish for fish that are eating kind of just regular mature threadfin because it's kind of a tweener size. But yeah, when we get kind of down to the 80, 79, 78, and those fish begin to group back up and the bait gets back grouped up better, the bigger bait, that's when, to me, that's when I would start throwing. How about you? I mean,
But I'm not gonna lie, I don't throw the poacher.
yeah, and you don't throw a whole lot of big swim baits in general.
No.
I've tried to force it lately, but
Yeah, to me right now is not the time. I mean, we're in the earliest part of the transition, and the majority of the bait fish that are up shallow that are getting fed on by bass are small bait fish. And that poacher is just too big a profile. Like, I'm even throwing like the smallest, like the 3-inch Divine swim bait, the smallest one I can get is what I'm throwing a lot right now. You can get them to bite a 4-inch or 5-inch swim bait, but the smaller ones are the better ones right now, in my opinion.
And this time last year, Vic in my boat was throwing a little 1/4 ounce
Lipless crankbait?
lipless crankbait.
Yeah, dude, that bait is so deadly. And the more grass you have in the lake, the better it is. But like those fall transition schoolers that you're talking about that you saw today, I think that 1/4 ounce lipless crankbait is the best bait on earth for them.
Yep.
You can throw it far, and you can fish it fast, and they bite it. I mean, I've got some gold chrome, old Bill Lewis gold chrome rat ale, like the original rat ale traps, that don't even have any gold chrome left on them, that you don't have enough money to buy them from me. Because I know when I get around that situation, I can throw those out there, and I'm going to catch a lot of fish.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of fish.
How many of y'all fishing Sealy next weekend?
Few of y'all, yeah.
The main thing is just follow your gut.
Yeah, and be nice to each other out there. Even when they act like idiots, just say hi.
That's under your breath.
Yeah, just say hi.
Yeah, don't be like me and Zach Watts.
Be like grandma and be like, well, bless his heart. Just bless his heart. Bless his heart. Only in the South can you say something as
That sounds so
kind and sweet as bless his heart and be dog cussing somebody. That's when an old woman tells you bless your heart, that's about as bad a cussing as you're going to get. Yeah, that's right. What'd you and Zach do last year? Did y'all get into it with somebody?
Well,
I've never been into any disagreements on the water, not even this week or anything.
Yeah, never. Sure.
We never mind that I almost got a C-25 upside my head this week.
I had Zach on speakerphone. And Zach was only like 75 yards across the cove from us.
Wait a minute, are we allowed to tell this story on camera? Because I know Zach will know we might not be able to.
Yeah, no, it's fine.
Okay.
No.
Okay.
And this guy, I'm telling you, comes pulling right up on me. And when I say right up on me, I mean this close. And Zach said, damn, hand, is he going to get in your boat? And you could hear it on the phone and the echo.
So that guy heard it?
Yeah.
Yes.
And I asked him, I said, can I help you? He's like, no. Oh, okay, well, you're just so close. I figured I'd ask if you needed help. He's like, no, I'm good. All right, man. Well.
Good talk.
Set up like
Like right
45
on
feet on the other side.
Yeah.
It is what it is, man. What we got to remember is, hey, is that necessarily right? No, it's not right at all. It's not right at all in any way. But in an event like Sealy's, you're going to have guys that they don't know they're doing anything wrong. They're out here on a public lake. Everybody can fish anywhere. We're all just yucking it up, kicking back, having a good time. If we win some money, we win some money. If not, we're going to drink some with our buddies when we're done. I think 99.9% of the time when something like that happens, that guy that's doing it doesn't know he's doing something bad. You know what I'm saying? Like,
Yeah.
So you just got to try to remember. It's hard. I know it. It's irritating when you're serious about it and you're competing and that happens. It's very frustrating. But you just got to try to remember those guys that are doing that, man, they don't know. They don't know they're doing anything wrong.
That's when you just say, hey, man, I hadn't been catching anything over here, but right over there on that.
Yeah.
Right there,
You see that guy? You see that guy named, his name is Zach. Go fish by him. He's been catching the fire out of
tearing it
them.
up.
Yes.
Well, the crazy thing about it is, I'm a firm believer that everything happens for a reason. So 2 years ago, big bass splash. I'm sitting back there in the back of this pocket, and I've caught 2 or 3 good unders back to back. And I get the fish thrown back in the live well, and I rear back to cast, and I damn near hit somebody. All right. And I turn back and look, and there's 3 boats right around me because they done seen me catch these fish. And I got so mad, and I said some things that I probably shouldn't have said, and then I left. I was like, I told my partner at this time, which it wasn't big, it was another guy. I said, let's just get out of here before it gets bad. And so we worked that bank line down, and not even 30 seconds later, I make a cast and I catch an over. And you better bet I paraded that thing around that cove.
The most famous fish on fork over the last 5 years.
So just, everything happens for a reason. Don't let nothing
That's right.
discourage you.
Well, and on this old lake, just like you were talking about doing something a little different or moving out off the bank, sometimes somebody pushing you out of it can happen anywhere out here. Mm-hmm. It can happen absolutely anywhere on this lake, especially when you're just talking about 1 over 24 inches is going to win you a big wad of money, win you an hour. Dude, that can happen. I mean, that can happen. You could go cast in a boat slip where guys are beaching a boat and that happened. Mm-hmm. You just never know out here. Why don't you tell them about the radio shout-outs last year at the Sealy Outdoors?
I don't know what you're talking about, man.
Huh? These idiots. They do radio shout-outs on KMOO. You can call in and shout out to my buddy fishing tournament, whatever. I haven't fished one of these I started guiding in 2015. I haven't fished one since 2013 or 14, whichever the last one was I fished. Because if you're a guide, you're not allowed to fish them. And so I wasn't out here, and I wasn't, I was checking on Facebook the weigh-ins and stuff, but I wasn't listening to the radio for hourly updates or nothing like that. So it was totally unbeknownst to me until the next, Sunday evening when Chris told me about it. But apparently these guys, tell them what you did.
So you can call in and get a shout out. So I just, I felt it was, nice and thing to do and, free advertisement, right?
Oh yeah, real nice.
And, to text in and say, hey, I just want to give a shout out to Billy Lawson, your Lake Fork guide. He's the best guide on Lake Fork. He's our hero. I mean, he is just, he's amazing. So
these guys start texting me and calling me hero, and I have no idea why they're calling me hero. And they haven't stopped calling me hero yet.
they ain't going to.
You guys are idiots.
But they finally did the shout out. And all 3 of us were in the bottom of this boat laughing. Oh, it was priceless. And then, hey, if anybody at KMOO is watching me right now, I'm not fishing it no more, but for the love of God, please stop playing 5-pound bass. You play that song 10 times a day. It is ridiculous.
Well, there's a tournament going on. And the ironic thing is, in that tournament, a 5-pound bass ain't going to do a thing for you with the slot. Not a thing. Nothing.
No, that's not true. Because at Berkeley in 2019, the only overcaught, that guy walked in. He walked by us. We were sitting in the chair.
Oh, he was 5-something, wasn't
And
he?
it was a 5-pound over.
That sucker looked like that chair leg right there.
Only overcaught in the whole tournament.
That was last year.
Was that last year?
It was like barely over 6. It
was
the
last year.
scrawniest looking
Yep.
24-inch fish.
Look pretty.
Yeah, usually you don't get a 6. I mean, in these fall trends, and that's another thing, guys. When you're fishing these tournaments right now, this time of year, you get a 15.5 incher that's skinny, don't rule him out. Because a lot of fish don't weigh nothing coming out of the summer. This is when you'll see a lot of overs weigh 7 pounds, 6 pounds, 8 pounds. You don't get a whole lot of those 9, 10, 11 pounders like you normally do in the springtime and all summer and everything else. So when you're fishing these tournaments, don't be just chunking one back because he weighs 1 3/4 pounds. Because if you catch a short fat one that's like 14 inches but weighs 1 3/4 pounds, a lot of times, especially in the Sealy, that 1 3/4 pounds will get you paid.
Hey, you may win a rod, a reel. I mean, anything.
Especially in that first hour. I think that's something that, and I don't know why, but I guess people just don't want to run in for that $300 check or whatever they think they might or might not get. But in the first hour of almost all of these big bass tournaments, but Sealy seems to be the worst one, they literally have places that go unpaid from people not bringing fish in. Like you could bring in a 0.5 pound fish
And win something.
and win money and win a check. In a lot of those hours, because in the first hour or two, people just don't bring all their fish in.
Well, because they think it's the prime time of fishing, and they don't want to miss.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So.
But that first hour is a golden opportunity. Yeah. I'll tell you one thing I would do if I was you guys preparing over the next week for Sealy is I would spend a lot of time early in the morning trying to find me somewhere I can catch some good fish from 6 a.m. to 7:30. Because if you can catch them from 6:30 to 7 during the Sealy's, and you can get you anything, even over a pound, really, but especially if you get 1.5 pounds, 2 pounds, that's money guaranteed that first hour. And come on back in and get your check and go fish for free the rest of the tournament.
Yep.
You know? Yep. That was always my strategy when I fished. I always wanted to have a spot that I could catch some udders on in the first hour because I knew I could catch a check in that first hour if I caught anything at all. And I had a spot back in the day that a different guy bought the house, and this guy doesn't do the same thing. But this was back before there were so many green lights. You got to remember, this is back in 2011, 12, 13. There wasn't really a whole lot of green lights. They weren't really a thing, night fishing on green lights. So really, when you're looking for spots, because it's still dark when the Sealy's his first cast goes off for about 30, 45 minutes, it's dark. So I was looking for lighted docks to fish because where the lights would still be on. And there was this one guy that he would only turn them on when he was there, but he was there every weekend. So every Friday and Saturday night, he'd be out there night fishing on his dock, and he'd have these lights shining down in the water, and he'd, sit out there and get drunk or something and leave them on because they'd be on the next morning. And then you come back in the afternoon, they'd be off. So whenever he woke up, he'd go down and turn all the stuff off. And then the next night, he'd go back there and turn them back on. Well, so I would get on this dock, and there's 2 docks right beside each other. They were the closest ones to the main lake in this cove. They had a drop off on them. He had brush in between the 2 docks. And he had lights. It was jam up spot, dude. And when those lights were on, it was guaranteed. You pull in there for the first hour, you're fixing to catch 10 or 12, 15 fish every morning, minimum. Just throw your Texas rig in there and you're going to catch them. And the last Sealy's, if I'm remembering correctly, I think the last Sealy's I fished, we had either 4 or 5 fish that were 2-pounders, and me and the guy I was fishing with, I caught 2 or 3, he caught 2 or 3, whatever it was, and we came back in for the first weigh-in and never went back out because we just alternated hours. We weighed fish in the rest of the day.
That's what I'm talking about.
And we fished for 30 minutes. We were done because you just went in there and you caught them so quick, and we had the right ones that morning. But that was always my focus for Sealy's, was having an early spot, and you can come out knowing you're going to get a profit if you can catch a 1.5 to 2 pound fish. And that's not really that hard to do this time of year, honestly. It's really not. If you work hard enough and go find them spots, you can find a spot where you can go catch some 1.5-pounders, 2-pounders. Especially this time of year. You catch a lot of the smaller fish this time of year. Even when I'm not a under the slot guy. I've never been a stringer tournament guy out here. The other hourly tournaments I fished, other than the Sealy, I really didn't even worry about unders. I just tried to catch an over, and if I didn't, oh well, it is what it is. But in that one, it was so easy to do. You can catch a lot of those fish this time of year. There's a lot of those fish that were born in the spring that are getting to that 1.5 pound mark now,
Mm-hmm. Whatever you do not throw a boat away like I did the first year. I caught one that was right at 16. Right at it. And this is before I really knew a whole lot about the rules on the slot deal. If they're right at 16, you're fine. All right. The state law, and a lot of people don't know this. The state law, and I didn't know this, so don't take it that way. I just found that out this week from one of my buddies. The state law on it is when you hold the fish in its resting position on the tail, all you do is pinch the tail. You do not swipe the tail, you just pinch it. All right. Where they come from in the tournaments, it says in the book that hardtail fish, like your saltwater fish, those are the ones you're supposed to swipe. So they've kind of adopted that, and they do both. But the game warden cannot write you a ticket if you bring it in here and they swipe the tail and it's long, because that's not how you check a fish. That's the tournament rules, but that's not how you check the fish. So if you have one that's right at 16, keep it, because that sucker will shrink throughout the day.
Yeah, a lot of times they will shrink up a little bit. And one thing you can also do too, anytime you have a question about, hey, can it touch the line? Does it have to be under the line? Whatever your question is my board the same length as your board? Because different measuring boards may be off a 32nd of an inch, and it comes down to that sometimes, right? So you can always go check your board with their board. You can always talk to the tournament director and ask him about any rule specifications. And that would be, if you have a fish that's questionable, I highly encourage everybody that has a questionable fish to go find the tournament director before you get in line. Because once you get in that weigh-in line, now the game warden can get you if you're wrong. But before you put that fish in the weigh-in line, go up there, find the tournament director, ask him whatever question you have about a questionable fish, check your board with their board, ask for a courtesy check. They'll give you one of their boards. You can go check it on your boat before you get in that line. Just don't be scared to ask that tournament director for any clarifications on rules. And for the most part, the game wardens I know, if you come in there and you got one it measures over on their board, but you can show them on your board where it was just touching the line or just under the line, that game warden's not going to give you a fine for that. They've got dudes coming into the Sealy's that are bringing in 19-inch fish. Right? They're going to write plenty of tickets. I seen one right in front of me in line one time. I'm looking at it in the bag, and this is the fattest bass I've ever seen in my life. Like, this thing is swolled up like he done ate a softball, man. Like, he's huge fat. Like, didn't even look real. And I'm sitting there looking at that bass going, good Lord, if that thing measures, that's gonna be a like 4-pounder, like 3.5 pounder. It's crazy how big his fish was. And I'm like, surely it can't. He puts it on the board, it's 18 inches. And the game warden just sitting there and just shakes his head. Like 18 inches. Not even, there ain't no board that's gonna tell you're gonna measure 18 inches. Even a half inch, if you're a half inch off, they're gonna give you a ticket. But if you go in there and you got a line burner and he goes over on theirs and you go on your board and it's like touching it, but it's kind of close. I would, though, ask that tournament director about what, not to contradict you, but what he was talking about. If it was me, I'm going to ask the tournament director, how are you measuring your fish? Are you swiping? And I'm going to measure mine the exact same way the tournament director's measuring.
Right, because every tournament's going to be different. I was just using that as an example.
Yeah.
You know, because a lot of our tournaments we fish, they do swipe the tail.
City won't give you a courtesy check.
They won't give you a courtesy check? They won't. Can you go put your board up next to their board?
Last year I caught one that was 16 on the dot, but you turned it over. It was long,
Yeah.
just a little bit.
Yeah, and you got to, I will tell you on that, I know for sure you got to take the longer measurement.
Yeah.
Like,
They was checking them one way, and he told me once I got back, they check them one way, but they wouldn't come courtesy check mine at the boat.
yeah.
Well, that's just when you bring a fish that you know is under and see what it actually measures on their board and what it measures on yours. That way you know.
Well, I talked to Kurt there, and he said if I can make it go over, I will. So.
Yeah, so all those guys, every one of them that I've ever known, those weigh officials that are measuring the fish, they are going to take the approach that if they can make that an illegal fish, they're going to make it an illegal fish. If they can make an under go over, they're going to make it go over. If they can make an over go under, they're going to make it go under. Like, they're going to try to make the fish illegal. And all that is to protect them from any type of a lawsuit or this guy cheated or that guy cheated or he's his brother-in-law or whatever have you.
But you know, when they weigh them, you know, the belly down, mouth against the deal. It was legal that way. But if you turned it over,
Yeah. Well, what that is, that fish had a little curvature in its spine one way or the other. When you laid it a certain way, it was a quarter inch longer, 1/8 inch longer, whatever it was.
I don't even know where that
Yeah, you'll see that in some of them where they'll be a little different one side to the other. I mean,
I had gotten in trouble at a tournament before because they checked it both ways. When I got here, he wouldn't give me a courtesy check. He said, "Go ahead and bring it up here. If you're bad, we'll just have to give you a ticket." You know,
no, we ain't doing that. I've never heard of them not giving courtesy, like,
they wouldn't courtesy.
or at least letting you bring your board up there and measure your board against their board.
So you know.
It was good. Like one way, it was good.
Right. But if you go up there and measure your board against their board and your board is the exact same as their board, you know they're going to measure it long if you go up there on the wrong side.
Well, if they measured it and never turned it over, they'd never know it was wrong.
Yeah, well, that's just you taking your 50-50 chance in that situation.
I didn't want to take it.
Right. No, I don't blame you. I wouldn't have either. I wouldn't have either.
Well,
I even sent a picture to Kurt.
Yeah.
well, that's other game warden is Brad Fitzler. I can't remember. He always checks me when I'm duck hunting. When I caught this under, I'm telling you, fat, like 3 1/4 pound, and it was right there borderline. I called him, and I said, "Hey," I said, "what's the fine if it is over?" He's like, "I'm not telling you that." And I said, "No, man, I want to know." He's like, "I want to know if it's worth the risk to come up there to win a boat, or to just pay $500. You know, whatever it is. What is it?" He's like, "It's $300." He said, "But if you come up here, I'm seizing everything if it's under or over." And I'm like, Okay.
just to do.
Season everything, huh?
Sees everything. Yeah.
Hey, I asked the same question. He told me 5,
Okay.
but it could have been 3.
Yeah. Well, that was a couple years ago. But, I don't know.
This was just this past year.
Yeah.
When it happened to me.
Well, is he not around no more?
Yeah, he's still there.
I hadn't seen him. I didn't know if he
He'll
was.
be
or
here
not.
for a second.
Yeah, he's around. He's rolled around undercover in that bass fishing boat. He's the only game where I ever say he gonna roll up on you in a Skeeter ZX 225, baby. Just a black and white ski, looks like a bass fishing boat. You don't have any idea he's a game warden until he stands up, takes that life jacket off, and you're like, oh, I'm about to get checked.
You know, I got a funny story. One of my buddies, y'all
Hey,
like
he'll
this.
fish right beside you for a long time before he ever comes and talks to you.
You're right.
Harm was this older man. My buddy's, it was his daddy. They was out crappie fishing, and he got tired of having to measure every fish. So what he did is he got him a piece of electrical tape, put it on there, cut it to length, and stuck it on the side of his boat.
Makes sense.
Yeah. So he's out there and he's fishing all day long, catching these crappie, and this game warden comes up and checks him, whatever, and almost half his fish are under 10 inches long.
Well, that's not good.
No. The sun had done
Because
hit
that fine is per fish.
Yeah. The sun done hit the tape and
Shrunk
made it
it.
shrink.
That's a unique story. Have you seen the guys that have the tattoos?
Yeah.
The fish measure tattoos on their calves? It's got to be a bank fisherman there, I guess. I don't know. Any other questions about fishing? Anything? Nothing else? Well, shoot, let's ease on. My man just walked in. We're about to wrap it up. You got any questions, brother? Hey, you look like you've been golfing. That's right. That's good. Hey, I'm wearing a Titleist hat. Does that help any?
I'm not a golfer.
Oh, okay.
He said I'm a drinker.
Hey, I'm not really a golfer either. I ain't played in years, but I still got a Titleist hat though from that one time. Yeah, that's right. That's right. Well, man, thank you guys for coming. This is our first one back, and we'll get it going here again in 2 weeks, and we'll keep them rolling, man. We ain't gonna stop. We're back in full swing like we were for years now, and we're gonna get after it. You guys will see a bunch of us. Like I said, I got me and David content next week, and we'll just keep on pumping it out every week. If you guys have any requests for anything that y'all want to see us do on the water or anything like that, y'all can drop us a comment. Y'all can send us an email through yourlakefortguide.com. If you need anything to do with any guide trips or anything like that, hit us up at yourlakefortguide.com as well. We appreciate y'all coming. We certainly appreciate Cody. Thank you for helping me tonight.
Thank you, bro.
And Lake Fork Marina, y'all go down there and buy some stuff. Tell them thank you because they do an awesome job letting us gather and talk fishing like this every 2 weeks. So appreciate y'all.